So if you think about like the traditional commercial real estate model, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ultimate goal for decades was basically just to be this invisible landlord. You secure a 10-year corporate lease, you make sure the elevators work, and you just collect the rent.
Right. You just stay completely out of the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a totally static relationship. It's just based on square footage. But if you step into a modern, successful co-working space today, the leadership isn't acting like a landlord at all.
Oh, not even a little bit.
No.
Yeah.
They're operating much more like, I don't know, a cruise ship director mixed with an ecosystem manager.
Yeah.
They're constantly engineering the environment and, tweaking the amenities. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone.
Glad to be here.
Today, our mission for you is to unpack a really fascinating strategic guide from the business management firm Stellipop. It explores exactly how to cultivate that dynamic, visionary leadership in the co-working industry.
Which is an incredibly volatile industry, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at the fundamental shift from, conventional reactive management to true strategic thinking. And I kind of like to think of it like the difference between checkers and chess.
Oh, that's a good way to frame it.
Right. Like conventional thinking is checkers. You're just reacting to the piece right in front of you. But strategic thinking is chess. You have to anticipate the board like 5 moves ahead.
And that distinction is vital, especially in a fast-paced industry like flexible workspaces. Stellipop frames conventional thinking as inherently defensive.
Defensive how?
Yeah.
Like just putting out fires.
Exactly. You're just reacting to the immediate problem. A broken coffee machine, a tenant leaving, a sudden spike in utility costs.
Right.
But strategic thinking is anticipatory. It requires looking at how the macro elements of today are going to inform the micro realities of tomorrow. You aren't just putting out fires.
You're designing a building made of fireproof materials before the spark even happens.
Literally.
And the reason this mindset is a survival requirement for co-working rather than just a nice to have, philosophy comes down to who the industry actually serves.
Right, at the target demographic.
Yeah, the guide notes that co-working explicitly targets people who are, and I'm quoting here, unsatisfied by current ways of working. That is such a fascinating baseline to me.
It really is.
Because your entire customer base is made up of individuals and companies who have actively rejected the traditional office model.
And that rejection means their expectations are constantly shifting. It's a moving target.
So you can't just offer the same old thing with a fresh coat of paint.
Right. If you just build a slightly more colorful version of a traditional cubicle farm,
Yeah.
those customers will leave because you haven't actually solved their underlying dissatisfaction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The business has to evolve ahead of its members, and the source material actually makes a really critical point here about the division of labor when it comes to that evolution.
Yeah, right. The staff versus the leadership.
Exactly. The frontline staff, the community managers greeting people at the door, they are absolutely essential for building a forward-looking culture.
And they're gathering all that real-time feedback, right?
Yes, exactly. But culture alone cannot pivot a business model. It is solely on the leadership to synthesize that feedback and implement the higher level strategy.
Right, because the friendliest community manager in the world cannot save you if you signed a toxic lease or targeted the wrong demographic.
Exactly. The strategy has to be there.
Which means the very first step to being strategic, if we go back to that chess analogy, is understanding the board you're playing on.
You have to know the ecosystem.
Yeah, developing a holistic understanding of the local ecosystem. And the Stellipop guide points to 3 intersecting forces that leaders absolutely have to monitor.
Right. Local real estate dynamics, workplace standards, and broader industry trends.
Right.
You have to watch where those 3 vectors collide. You cannot treat your workspace as a closed loop.
But, okay, let me push back on this a little.
Sure, go for it.
When we talk about understanding local real estate for co-working, aren't we overcomplicating it just a bit?
What do you mean?
Well, at the end of the day, commercial real estate is about margin, right? You buy low or you lease low, and you charge your co-working members a premium for the flexibility.
That's the conventional wisdom, yes.
Right. So if you secure a cheap building, your margins are inherently better, and you have a buffer against all that market chaos. Doesn't understanding the ecosystem really just boil down to, finding the absolute cheapest per square foot lease in town?
It's a very common assumption, but viewing real estate purely through the lens of your own immediate overhead is like the textbook definition of conventional reactive thinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It completely ignores the macroeconomic ripple effects that actually dictate your demand. The guide illustrates this beautifully.
Okay, walk me through it.
Okay, imagine you are in a rapidly gentrifying city, And commercial leases suddenly become incredibly scarce and expensive.
Okay, sounds like a nightmare for overhead.
Right. The reactive landlord looks at that and panics, thinking only about their own upcoming lease renewal. But the strategic ecosystem manager looks at that scarcity and sees an opportunity.
Because other companies are getting squeezed too.
Exactly. They realize that mid-sized companies, like a 50-person tech firm or a regional accounting branch, they are about to be completely squeezed out of the traditional office market.
Oh, wow. Because they can't afford a 10-year commitment at those crazy new rates.
Right. Which means they are suddenly going to be looking for flexible, turnkey solutions.
So your target demographic just shifted, like overnight, from solo freelancers to whole enterprise teams, purely because of a squeeze in the traditional commercial market.
Precisely. And accommodating a 50-person enterprise team requires fundamentally different infrastructure than accommodating 50 disconnected freelancers.
Yeah, I imagine you can't just put them all at communal tables.
No, you need dedicated bandwidth, private conference room routing, different security protocols. If you understood the real estate ecosystem, you saw that commercial squeeze coming a year in advance, and you already started retrofitting a floor of your building to handle enterprise clients.
Okay, I see. But what about the other side of the coin? Say a massive employer like a major auto manufacturer or a massive tech campus just decides to pack up and leave your region entirely.
A major exodus, yeah.
To me, that sounds like a death knell.
Yeah.
If the local economy takes a massive hit and thousands of people lose their jobs, how does anticipating that save your bottom line? Wouldn't your co-working space just, empty out alongside the rest of the town?
Not necessarily, and this is where strategic thinking gets highly analytical.
Okay.
When a massive employer leaves, yes, corporate spending drops, but what happens to the talent? Thousands of highly skilled workers don't just vanish into thin air.
Right, they're still in the city.
Exactly. Many of them become free agents, they start consulting, they launch spin-off startups, or they transition to remote work for companies based in other states.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, they suddenly need professional infrastructure that isn't their living room couch. So a macroeconomic crisis for the region can actually trigger a massive influx of new, independent professionals into a flexible workspace.
Assuming the leadership actually anticipated the shift and pivoted their marketing to capture those newly independent workers.
Exactly. You have to pivot your pricing tiers and amenities to capture that specific group.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
The environment dictates the demand.
Yeah.
And the guide also mentions university expansions or the creation of new innovation hubs as another example.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one.
Right. Like if a local college suddenly secures massive funding for a robotics lab down the street, you don't just keep marketing to local graphic designers.
No, you immediately pivot.
Yeah, you offer amenities that appeal to grad students, researchers, and venture capitalists looking to fund those spin-offs.
It's all about mapping the intersections. If you know how the local real estate inventory, the movement of major employers, and the shifting demographics all interact, you can actually predict what your members will need before they even realize they need it.
But practically speaking, tracking all of those macroeconomic vectors, real estate, university grants, corporate migrations, that is a staggering amount of data for one person to track.
It's impossible for one person.
Right. If you're listening to this and you're running a business, you already know there aren't enough hours in the day. But the Stellipop text offers a really clear structural solution to this information overload.
Yes, strategic alliances.
Exactly. You have to construct a composite lens to see the whole market. It's kind of like assembling a crew for a heist movie.
A heist movie?
Yeah. You don't want 5 safecrackers. You need a hacker, a getaway driver, a demolitions expert. You need a diverse team.
That's actually a great analogy. No single background can process all that market data effectively.
Right.
The guide strongly advocates for diversifying the leadership team's expertise. If your leadership team all went to the same business school and thinks in the exact same spreadsheets, you have a massive blind spot.
Yeah, the text uses a great example here. If you are operating a co-working space that specifically targets, like the art design niche, but your entire background is in traditional finance, you're basically flying blind.
Completely blind.
You might know how to optimize a profit and loss statement, but you have absolutely no idea what a digital illustrator actually needs out of a physical workspace on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right. You don't know the workflow, so you pull an on-the-ground design expert into your leadership trust.
They become your hacker, basically.
Exactly. They act as your sensory network for that specific vertical. They understand the software requirements, the specialized lighting needs, the networking habits of that community.
They provide the raw, qualitative data.
Yes. And then you apply the quantitative business structure to make it profitable. And the reverse is equally true, by the way.
Duh.
A brilliant aesthetic designer who's running a space absolutely needs a ruthless financial operator at the table to ensure the beautiful space actually yields a return.
That internal diversification makes perfect sense. But the guide pushes this concept of alliances way past the internal team into a strategy that I think, honestly, a lot of traditional business owners would find deeply uncomfortable.
You're talking about co-opetition.
Yes, co-opetition. The text actively encourages leaders to reach out to their direct competitors in the local co-working market to share ideas and stories.
Which sounds crazy at first.
It does. In conventional business, if a competitor opens up 3 blocks away, you try to crush them, or at least, guard your operational secrets with your life. Why on earth would you want to help them succeed?
Because in an emerging or evolving industry, obscurity and friction are much bigger threats than your local competitor.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The economic rationale here is about expanding the total addressable market. If you and your competitor both provide terrible, isolated experiences, the local market just decides that co-working as a concept doesn't work.
Oh, and everyone just goes back to traditional leases or their living rooms.
Exactly. But if you collaborate to normalize high-quality, flexible workspaces in your city, the overall demand grows. A rising tide lifts all ships.
So by sharing best practices, you're collectively lowering the customer acquisition cost for everyone, because the general public requires less education on why co-working is even valuable in the first place.
That's it, exactly. The guide actually suggests actively touring other spaces and interviewing their leadership about what amenities actually deliver the best ROI.
Like just walking in and asking them.
Yeah. If the space down the street spent $50,000 installing a podcast studio and they tell you it sits empty 90% of the time because the local market doesn't actually have an audio production footprint, well, they just saved you 50 grand.
Wow. And you trade that insight for a lesson you learned about, say, managing HVAC costs during the summer.
Exactly. It's mutual benefit.
The source also gets into the logistics of reciprocal programs, which I think is a brilliant way to weaponize these alliances, like partnering with spaces in other cities or even internationally.
Oh, it's a massive value add with almost zero capital expenditure.
How does that actually work in practice?
Well, say you operate a single location in Chicago. You can partner with independent spaces in London, Tokyo, and Austin. You just integrate your back-end booking APIs so that your local members get seamless, white-labeled access to desks when they travel.
That is so smart. So suddenly, your independent single location space offers the same global footprint as a massive corporate co-working conglomerate.
Right, simply because you built a strategic alliance.
Incredible. We also need to talk about the final alliance, the text highlights, which is cultivating relationships with investors, even if you aren't currently seeking a funding round.
This goes right back to gathering that macroeconomic data we talked about earlier. A local manager really only sees the local market.
Right.
But institutional investors or venture capitalists, they are looking at deal flow across massive portfolios. They see the macro capital flows.
So if an investor tells you that, 80% of the Series B tech companies in their portfolio are abandoning their physical headquarters to go completely remote.
You now possess advanced intelligence.
Yeah. You know that a wave of well-funded remote-first workers is about to flood the market.
And because you already have that relationship established, when the data tells you it's time to aggressively expand to capture those remote workers, you have the capital on speed dial.
You're ready to move. Okay, so let's ground this. We have our ecosystem mapped out. We've built our composite heist movie leadership team.
Naturally.
We are trading insights with competitors and absorbing macro data from investors. The intelligence gathering is totally complete.
Right, you have the data.
But ideas are cheap. How do you actually implement these pivots in an industry that's built on, concrete, commercial leases, and really expensive furniture?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because the source dictates that leaders must embrace flexibility and experimentation. But we aren't talking about A/B testing a software update where rolling back a mistake costs literally nothing.
No, the difficulty of applying rapid prototyping to physical real estate is the central challenge of the entire industry. You obviously cannot gut renovate a building every time the market shifts.
So what's the solution?
The guide solves this through incremental ROI-based changes. You have to adopt the rigorous empirical mindset of a scientist running controlled trials. You're effectively treating your physical space as a laboratory.
Okay, let's walk through the mechanics of that. The guide uses an example that we can call the premium test.
Okay, the premium test.
Say your diverse brain trust and your investor contacts all indicate a rising demand for high-end luxury workspaces in your city. The conventional reactive approach would be to, take out a massive loan, rip out the standard desks, and upgrade the entire facility to chase the trend.
Which is a catastrophic risk, because what if your intelligence is slightly off, or if the trend is just a flash in the pan?
Right, you're bankrupt. So how do you test it without that insane risk?
You isolate the variables. You take a single, say, 500 square foot corner of your existing space, just one corner.
Okay.
You install the high-end acoustic pods, the premium ergonomic furniture, the elevated design elements. You create a microenvironment. And then, crucially, you gate it.
Gated, like a velvet rope.
Essentially, yeah. You introduce a new premium keycard tier or a specialized booking credit system, and you meticulously track the data.
So you aren't just sending out a survey asking people if they like the nice chairs.
No, surveys are flawed. You are tracking the actual fob swipes and the space utilization sensors to see if the revenue generated by that corner justifies the capital expenditure.
Wow, so it literally is physical A/B testing.
That is exactly what it is.
If the utilization sensors show that members are consistently paying the premium to access that specific corner, you have the math to back it up.
Right. You have mathematical proof of the return on investment. Then, and only then, do you expand the premium offering to the rest of the floor.
And if it fails, like if people walk through it on a tour but refuse to actually pay the higher membership fee,
then you simply revert that small footprint back to standard desks. You absorbed a tiny, contained loss instead of bankrupting the company on a full-scale renovation.
that is brilliant. And the source notes this incremental approach applies to everything they call amenitization.
Yes, amenities are a huge trap for conventional thinkers.
Right, because you don't just build a $100,000 commercial cafe kitchen because you think people might want lattes.
Exactly. You bring in a high-end espresso cart on a 1-month lease, you track the point-of-sale data, and you measure the foot traffic heat maps.
And if the cart prints money, you build the kitchen.
And if it doesn't, you just roll the cart out the door.
No harm, no foul.
What is truly transformative here is the underlying philosophy. When you have this agile testing mechanism in place, market disruptions stop being threats. They start becoming opportunities.
Because you aren't paralyzed by fear.
Right. A sudden shift in workplace norms or a new competitor moving in doesn't cause panic. It just prompts a new hypothesis to test in your laboratory.
Yeah.
The ultimate mandate of the Stellipop guide is that you must responsively build your business based upon real, proven market needs and actively discard your own assumptions.
Because your assumptions are rooted in what made you successful yesterday?
Exactly. But the data from your incremental tests will tell you what will make you successful tomorrow.
So, synthesizing everything we've pulled from this guide today. Stepping out of conventional defensive management requires a complete rewiring of how you view your operational environment. It demands that you see the broader macroeconomic ripples in real estate and talent pools. It requires you to actively seek out diverse perspectives, construct alliances with the very competitors you used to fear, and rigorously test every single assumption against hard ROI data in a physical laboratory.
And, while this guide is specifically tailored to the coworking industry, the utility of this framework is entirely universal.
Oh, for sure.
Whether you are leading a logistics startup, managing a retail chain, or directing a department within a legacy corporation, building a strategy based on empirical market needs rather than institutional assumptions is the very definition of resilient leadership.
It's the difference between merely surviving the current market and actively architecting the next one. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over, regardless of what industry you happen to be in today. We started this deep dive by noting that flexible workspaces exist to serve those who are unsatisfied by current ways of working.
Right, the core demographic.
And the last few years have completely shattered traditional office life. I mean, we've seen the enforced remote work experiment, the aggressive mandates to return to the office, the rise of asynchronous global teams. The entire concept of where we work is basically fractured.
It has fundamentally altered the baseline of what employees expect from their environments.
Exactly. So looking at your own field, your own team, or even your own daily routine, what unmet needs are still hiding in plain sight? What is the next iteration of productivity or collaboration that workers haven't even realized they need yet?
Because somewhere out there, a new dissatisfaction is brewing.
Oh, absolutely. And it is just waiting for a strategic thinker to anticipate it, test it, and build the solution. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep looking ahead, and we will catch you next time.